Okay, so it's 1998 in Indonesia, and President Suharto is forced to resign. It unleashes lots of different actions amongst Islamist extremist groups. This culminates in the 2002 Bali bombing, and throughout the next few years we see a rise and increase in extremist violence, loss of lives, and by 2016, the editor of Foreign Affairs says Indonesia's actually practically eliminated the threat of extremist violence. How has that happened? And what has Search's work done in that context to try and support some of the strategies to transform violent extremism? So the story I'm going to tell you is called Who Am I? A story of Santri identity. Santri is the name of the students in the Islamic boarding schools. So it's 2011, 2012. The challenge is that we have 10 Islamic boarding schools, all that are in areas where either there's been bombings, there's been arrests, or there's been some kind of military action related to the Densus 88 counter-terror group or other kinds of actions that have created a heightened sensitivity around terrorism. There's rumors that it's in these boarding schools that there's breeding grounds for future terrorisms. So one of the responses of Search for Common Ground's team is, let's help these young people make documentary films about who they see they are. So what they did over the next months of working together, exploring their identities, was try and find a sense of how can I be a Santri, how can I be a Muslim, how can I be pure and live in dignity, but recognize that there's a plurality in my identity. And they explored that through a series of documentary films. One of the most hilarious ones is about this punk rocker, who's also a Santri student, and the students did a profile of him because he was quite controversial. Even though he's in the classroom, when he leaves classroom, he goes out and he sings and he busks in the street. And the students did a film about saying, can he be a real Muslim and be a punk rocker, right? And here the students are saying, it's okay because he's a punk out of school, but when he's within our environment, he's still a good Santri student. The students explored something that was kind of a ritual way of calling upon the ancestors, called the sasambat, right? So they went out to discover, what is that tradition? Can I be a Muslim and also embrace this? What is it about? Let's debunk some of the myths. And in the process of exploring this, they also learned how it was comfortable to get used to other viewpoints. They learned about their own understanding of their Islamic identity, and they learned about how that can coexist with other identities. This was also the same with the group that did a special documentary film where, for the first time ever, they went into a church. They filmed people praying. They tried to understand what is it that's made them choose to be Christians, and how is it that myself as a Santri, I can coexist with them. And again, these young students, for them it was life transforming. It gave them that permission to go towards the other and explore their own multiplicity of identities. And they also did a profile of this guy who apparently snores and wakes up early and prays all the time. He was kind of like the extremist guy within the Santri community. And they did a profile of him in a humoristic way, but also recognizing his deep commitment to, learning the Quran and dreaming to become an imam. What's important in this experience is what we didn't do. We didn't send out a campaign that said, hey, this is what you should do and terrorism is bad, right? We knew that the messenger was more important than the message. And these films were then shown within the Islamic boarding schools, in the neighboring communities. They went around Indonesia in a national festival. They opened up dialogue about people's identity, but from the perspective of themselves. And this complemented many other strategies that were underway in Indonesia, things like political reforms, and work with the 800 people that the Indonesian government had arrested for having committed terrorist acts. In the prisons, they were offered the chance for reform and transformation. Search was also part of that work. So in the way of enabling multiple identities to be amplified, giving people a sense to say, who do I want to be and what is my hero's journey? How can I do that while still retaining my sense of who I am as a Muslim? We were enabled to really support an entire countrywide effort
to transform violent extremism. Thanks.